Hey everyone, welcome back to our next trig lesson. Today we're going to have an introduction to the unit circle. So the unit circle is on the coordinate plane, the xy coordinate plane. The center of the unit circle is at the origin. And the radius of the unit circle equals 1. So the unit circle can give us values of sine, cosine, and tangent of various angles depending on where those angles are placed in the unit circle. So as a review, the signs in quadrant 1, x is positive and y is positive. In quadrant 2, your x is negative and your y is positive. In quadrant 3, x and y are both negative, and in quadrant 4, your x is positive and your y is negative. So knowing those signs is going to help us figure out sine, cosine, and tangent of each angle depending on which quadrant that angle sits in. So if we're talking about degrees or radians, our angle always starts on the positive x-axis. So here, if I was just going one to the right, my angle measurement would be 0 degrees or 0 radians. Now, if I go to the y-axis, this angle measurement starting at 0 is a 90-degree angle, which is equivalent to pi over 2 radians. So that means any angle measurement between 0 and 90 or 0 and pi over 2 will give you a sine and a cosine that are both positive. Going another 90 degrees, halfway around the circle is 180. Whole circle is 360, so 180 is halfway around. 180 is equivalent to pi radians. If we keep going, we have 270 degrees or 3 pi over 2 radians. And if we go all the way around the circle, we reach 360 degrees or 2 pi radians. So like I said, everything between 0 and 90 or 0 and pi over 2 will give you positive and positive. Between 90 and 180 or pi over 2 and pi, you'll have a negative x value and a positive y value. Between 180 and 270 or pi and 3 pi over 2, both your x and y will be negative. And between 270 and 360 or 3 pi over 2 and 2 pi, your x is positive and your y is negative. But of course, we're going to have angles on here that aren't 0, 90, 180, 270, or 360. And this is where our special right triangles come into play. So let's say I draw a radius from the origin to the circumference of the circle. And we want to figure out the coordinates of this point. Well, if this angle is 30 degrees and the radius is 1, we simply drop a perpendicular line from the point to the x-axis. So you can use, now we've created a right triangle, and you can use what you know about special right triangles to figure out the coordinates of this point. If the hypotenuse, is 1, remember that the angle across from the 30 degrees, or the side across from 30 degrees, is half of the hypotenuse, or 1 over 2. The side that's across from the 60-degree angle is the shorter side, 1 over 2, times the square root of 3. So that would be root 3 over 2. So the x value of this point is root 3 over 2 to the right. And the y value is how far we go up from the x-axis, and that would be 1/2. Okay? So, remember that the side that is opposite is your sine, and the side that's adjacent equals your cosine. So, which side is next to 30 degrees? That's √3/2. And the side that is opposite is 1/2. So how does this relate to our x and y coordinates? It means that your x coordinate is the cosine of the angle, and your y coordinate is the sine of the angle. So I just explained how we get the x and y values depending on which angle we're given, but we're not expecting you to memorize that or calculate that every time you want to work with the unit circle. We've posted a copy that you can either print out or have in front of you on the computer when you're doing your work. So you just have to be able to know how to read it. Okay. So let's say, for example, I asked you to find the sine, cosine, and tangent of 5π/6. So the first thing you want to do is find 5π/6 on your unit circle, which is right here. Then the x coordinate is your cosine. So the cosine of 5π/6 is the x coordinate here, which is -3/2. The y coordinate is your sine. So the sine of 5π/6 equals 1/2. Tangent equals sine over cosine. So we do 1/2 divided by -3/2. Now, when two fractions are divided, but they have the same denominator, there's two ways you can handle it. You can, if you're dividing by a fraction, you can change to multiplication, and switch the second fraction. Here, the 2's will simplify, and you have -1 over the square root of 3. The other thing you can do is, if the denominators are the same, you can just cancel them out, and you'll get 1 over -3. And see, either way, you're going to get the same answer. What would be the sine, cosine, and tangent ratios for 300 degrees? I would suggest you pause right now and try to do it, and then see if your answers are right. So I find my 300 degrees. Cosine is x, so cosine of 300 degrees is the x coordinate, or 1/2. Sine is the y coordinate, so the sine of 300 degrees equals -√3/2. Tangent is y over x, sine over cosine, or y over x, and my sine was negative root 3 over 2, and I divide that by my cosine, which is 1/2. So you can either keep, change, flip, or get rid of the same denominators, and the tangent of 300 degrees equals negative root 3 over 1, or just negative root 3. You may also be given a point on the unit circle and asked to give information about that point. So let's say given point P is located at negative 1/2, comma, negative root 3 over 2. So look at those coordinates and find where they are located on the unit circle. Since they're both negative coordinates, I know it has to be in quadrant 3. So I'll look in quadrant 3 and find negative 1/2 and negative root 3 over 2. That means this is in the third quadrant. The angle measurement for these coordinate points would be 4 pi over 3 radians, or 240 degrees. The sine of point P is your y value. The cosine of point P is your x value. And the tangent of point P is sine over cosine, negative root 3 over 2 divided by negative 1/2. So notice that when we're in quadrant 3, since both the sine and the cosine are negative, when we divide a negative by a negative, my tangent will become positive. The denominators are gone. You have positive root 3 over positive 1, which is just positive root 3. Let's try another. If point P is located at negative 1, comma 0. Okay, that's over here. Now that's on the x-axis. It's not between the x-axis and the y-axis, so that means it's not in a quadrant. The angle is either 180 degrees or pi radians. Sine of P is your y value. So here it's 0. Cosine is your x value, which is negative 1. Tan equals sine over cosine, so 0 over negative 1. Whenever we have a 0 in the numerator and a number in the denominator, the answer is simply 0. So try your best on the homework. Please reach out if you need help or if you have any questions, etc. I'm always here. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.